Appearing as just a dot on the map, this highway route less than 100 km long is actually one of the most dangerous geographical areas in the world. This is the Suwałki Corridor. It is the only and shortest point connecting mainland Russia to Kaliningrad. But there is a problem. It belongs to Poland and Lithuania. For many years, this corridor was a nightmare scenario for NATO. But after 2022, it turned into a death trap for Putin. Because NATO shifted from defense to offense, Poland and Lithuania are militarizing this corridor, deploying brigades and digging trenches. As a Polish general put it, we can wipe Kaliningrad off the map instantly, and this is no empty threat. Now, Kaliningrad's land bridges are being severed, its airspace is closing, Russia's stronghold in Europe is turning into NATO's open-air prison. These changes and threats on the ground are not just on paper. Lithuania and Poland are speaking with steel through their active military integration. This military preparation is like a nightmare descending upon the logistics lines that feed Kaliningrad from the mainland. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda called on Poland to extend this training area into its own territory, proposing an unprecedented joint military stronghold in NATO history. The new military training area, established by the Lithuanian government in the town of Miest, at the intersection of the Belarusian and Polish borders, is the physical center of this encirclement. This project, implemented with an investment of euros 100 million, covers a massive area of 14,600 hectares and allows more than 40 NATO soldiers to conduct brigade-level exercises simultaneously. This proposal means that the Suwałki Gap is no longer a transit point, but has become a plug that will instantly halt Russian military movements. Described by Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda as a unique solution in the NATO context, this move transforms the Suwałki Corridor into an impregnable military fortress. These centers are at the heart of the forward defense doctrine, which aims to stop a potential Russian attack in the first centimeter. The Spike LR anti-tank missiles and the 14th Anti-Tank Regiment deployed in the region have the capacity to instantly destroy any breakthrough operation that Russia's armored units might attempt. Towards Kaliningrad, when we delve into the technical details, we see how radically the military balance on the ground has changed. The Polish army has deployed the 16th Pomeranian Mechanized Division and the 15th Zawijak Mechanized Brigade to the border with the most modern equipment. The main striking force of these units consists of South Korean-made K2 Black Panther tanks. These 55-ton beasts reach a high rate of fire per minute with their 120 mm smooth-bore guns and automatic loaders. Thanks to their 500 horsepower engines, the K2s demonstrate high mobility even in muddy terrain, establishing a technological superiority over Russia's older generation T-72B3 and T-90M tanks in the region. This mobility on the ground, combined with the K9 Thunder howitzers' shoot and scoot capability, enables them to detect and destroy Russia's artillery positions in Kaliningrad within seconds. Capable of firing 8 rounds per minute, these howitzers have the power to shut down the region's logistics lines with a single command. As the investigation deepens, we see how Russia's logistical arteries are being severed one by one. The logistical aspect of the siege advanced silently on iron rails. Lithuania, using EU sanctions as an excuse, largely shut down the transit of strategic materials to Kaliningrad. Restrictions imposed on the transit of cement, steel, fuel, and advanced technology components in particular have officially halted industrial production in the region. Now every train car heading to Kaliningrad is scrutinized inch by inch under NATO's digital surveillance. According to data from OSINT sources, rail transit has decreased four-fold over the past 3 years. Although Russia has turned to sea routes to break this blockade, the capacity of ferries departing from the Luga port is far from sufficient to compensate for the lack of land routes. Ships such as the Marshal Rosowski and Ursa Major have been unable to resolve the chaos created by thousands of trucks waiting for weeks in ports. The harshest move to reinforce military authority came from Polish General Yaroslav Gromyski. The general's ultimatum, if necessary, we will burn everything within a 300 km radius, confirmed that Kaliningrad was no longer an unsinkable aircraft carrier, but a fixed target for NATO missiles. Poland's newly acquired F-35 fighter jets and HIMARS systems provide a technological advantage capable of neutralizing every S-400 battery and Iskander missile launcher in Kaliningrad within seconds. Lithuania is not only aligning with Poland, but also joining forces with Germany. German panzer divisions are digging trenches along the Lithuanian border, preparing to seal off this isolated fortress forever. For 80 years, Berlin had stayed away from weapons, vowing never again. But today, Vladimir Putin's worst nightmare is becoming a reality. The German army is returning to the Kaliningrad border, and this time they have no intention of leaving. Berlin's Zittenwende, or turning point test, has now moved from diplomatic tables to trenches in the forests of Lithuania. This is Berlin's most aggressive military stance since World War II. This new iron axis established between Poland and Germany on NATO's eastern flank is effectively turning Russia's most strategic outpost in Europe into a military orphanage. The sound of German military boats echoing across the waters of Kaliningrad, formerly Königsberg, is not only a military threat to the Russian army, but also a massive psychological threshold. The threats by Polish generals to burn Kaliningrad, combined with German logistical support, render Moscow's promise to protect the region nothing more than an empty balloon. And Kaliningrad is militarily, the situation is even more dire. Moscow's response to this situation is nothing more than noisy diplomacy and empty threats. Russia has halted, withdrawn its most elite troops from Kaliningrad to counter new threats on the Finnish border and plug the holes in Ukraine. According to Sikorsky's reports, most of the heavy weapons and personnel in Kaliningrad have been moved to the front lines, turning the region into a defenseless orphanage against NATO. The remaining personnel are in a state of moral collapse. A sense of hopelessness fueled by a herd mentality prevails among soldiers who know that no help will come from the mainland. As a result, Kaliningrad has been transformed into a military orphanage, cut off from logistical support from the mainland, with its military strength weakened and surrounded on all sides by enemies. The real question now is not how Russia will defend this region, but when the region will completely surrender. This strategic encirclement of Kaliningrad has created a devastating domino effect not only on military maps, but also in the kitchens and wallets of the region's people. It is impossible for the economy of a region whose logistical arteries have been cut off to survive. And today, Kaliningrad is experiencing a full-blown economic collapse. The region's industrial giant, the After factory, was forced to shut down its production lines overnight due to a halt in parts supply. This meant the loss of income for thousands of families and the bankruptcy of the region's largest employer. Unofficial data published by RBC Euro shows that the unemployment rate in the region has increased by 21.7% since the beginning of the year. This is not a normal recession, but a systemic collapse. The economic collapse triggered a deep wave of panic among the population, followed by a quiet exodus. Sociological studies reveal that 1 in 5 adult Kaliningrad residents has seen their family or close circle leave the region. This exodus is not a simple migration. It is the evaporation of the region's most educated, most qualified young people and intellectual capital. People are packing their bags to escape the misery and isolation that has replaced the image of a Russian stronghold promised by Putin. Kaliningrad, expected to be Russia's most European city, now stands on the brink of a demographic abyss. One of the most painful effects of the blockade was felt in the energy sector. With the Baltic countries disconnecting from the Soviet-era Bell energy network and connecting to the European grid, Kaliningrad became an energy island. The region now has to generate its own electricity and import natural gas by sea, which is much more expensive. Lithuania's gas valve has become the most critical factor determining Kaliningrad's chances of survival. This situation creates a constant feeling of being held hostage among the region's residents. The fear of being left in the dark, high bills, and empty supermarket shelves have long since shattered the Kremlin's untouchability myth in the minds of the civilian population. This social and economic collapse is also seriously weakening loyalty bonds within Russia. The people of Kaliningrad are learning firsthand that the culprit behind the cement they cannot find in stores or the exorbitantly priced food is not Polish intelligence, but the senseless war launched by Moscow. The FSB blockade and denunciation mechanism deployed by the Kremlin to suppress this discontent is only driving the anger underground. But the urge to abandon a sinking ship grows stronger every day. Kaliningrad has become a strategic burden for the Russian mainland and a prison with no future for its people. As a result, this ripple effect, which began with the closure of the Suwałki Gap, is fundamentally shaking Russia's presence in Europe. A region is lost not only by weapons, but also by the depletion of hope and prosperity. This is exactly what is happening in Kaliningrad today. While Putin wants to use the region as a threat, he has actually turned it into a crisis center with his own hands. Kaliningrad is now less a fortress that Russia must defend and more a strategic time bomb that could explode at any moment with a social explosion. Kaliningrad's isolation symbolizes the beginning of a checkmate situation for Russia on the global geopolitical chessboard. Looking at the bigger picture, we see that the Baltic Sea has become a NATO lake and that Russia's Baltic fleet is trapped in its own port. With the participation of Finland and Sweden, NATO has completely taken control of the north and south of the sea, wiping out Russia's strategic depth. This new geographical reality has turned Kaliningrad into an indefensible pocket, while also largely neutralizing Moscow's nuclear blackmail capacity over Europe. This strategic encirclement is shaking not only Europe's security, but also Russia's global partnerships. The Baltic trade routes vital to China's Belt and Road project are now at great risk, with the German army digging trenches on the Lithuanian border. Beijing is deeply troubled by this militarization in the region and the return of German tanks because trade cannot thrive where the smell of gunpowder lingers. Putin's adventure in Ukraine has disrupted China's plans by transforming Russia's most valuable stronghold in Europe from a trade hub into a military graveyard. Moreover, the Kaliningrad crisis exposed the biggest lie of Russian military doctrine, the myth that Kaliningrad is impregnable. Open threats from Polish generals and NATO exercises in the region prove that Russia lacks the capacity to defend this isolated region by conventional means. In a potential conflict, Kaliningrad's connection could be severed in just a few hours, leaving the Russian garrison there to fend for itself. This vulnerability has crushed Russia's deterrence in Eastern Europe. NATO countries now prefer to pressure Russia's weak points rather than take its red lines seriously. Internally, the Kremlin is increasing the pressure and censorship to hide this strategic defeat. However, this only delays the inevitable end. Kaliningrad is where Russia's imperial ambitions collide with the wall of reality. The economic stagnation in the region and the feeling of being trapped among the skilled population represent the failure of the Russian state's most fundamental promise, the security and prosperity contract for Moscow. Kaliningrad is no longer a tool for demonstrating power. It has become a strategic liability that swallows billions of rubles each year and could become a center of rebellion at any moment. In conclusion, the Suwałki Corridor is no longer where Russia threatens NATO. It is where NATO is suffocating Russia. The fire Putin started in Ukraine could cause Russia to lose its most valuable asset in Europe through a strategic encirclement without firing a single shot. This process, which began with NATO closing the Suwałki Gap, shows that Russia's presence in the Baltic is slowly being erased. A fortress that is logistically strangled, economically collapsed, and beginning to be abandoned by its people, is no longer a fortress. It is merely a burden. Kaliningrad could be lost without a fight, because when logistics end, everything ends. So what are your thoughts on this matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay informed about military matrix special analysis, please subscribe to our channel and remember to turn on notifications.